but I just want you to put your mind into it, right? So we'll get it done together. So today we are going to be considering variables, data types, and everything within around that scope. Thanks to. So yeah, I was trying to. Okay, today it worked. Good. So I was trying to, kind of set up a slide for you guys, but I wasn't able to complete it. But let me just so we'll flow with this now. Okay, so welcome to class. So today we are going to be talking about the basics of JavaScript. I would like to say that it's not just our class and our discussion today is not just the basics of JavaScript. What we are going to be discussing today cuts across different programming languages, right? So we are just using JavaScript to express ourselves in this for the sake of this class and for the sake of the teaching, right? So, but what we are going to be discussing today are basics that are found around different programming languages, right? So, as beautiful as JavaScript is, it's not just the only programming language. So we have other programming languages that are around C++, C, Java, Python, name it, all of that. So, but what we are going to be discussing today is not just, peculiar to JavaScript in this sense. It's just peculiar to programming generally. So you want to put your mind into it. So we are going to be discussing variables. We are going to be discussing data types and then functions. These are things that are common within every programming language. And so let's dive into it without further ado. So the first concept we are going to be considering is variables. I think in our last class, I used variables, just that I did not explain what it was. So I know that there are some people that are big men, they already know what all of that is. So the first, confirm if you can see my screen. Just type in the comment section. Please type in the comment section. Type in the comment section if you can see my screen already. You can't see it. All right. I think it should be up now. Type in the comment section if you can now see it. Good. All right. So the first concept we want to talk about is declaring variables. And today's class is going to be more practical. So I would just put some things in perspective, then do practicals. Yeah, so I've tried sharing my entire screen and I think it's having some issue. But let's leave it at that first. I'll do that when we start coding. So what is a variable? Variables are very important when it comes to programming. And so it's important for you to catch the concept of variables very well. So variables are containers. They're like containers that stores values that can be used and changed throughout your code, our code, throughout programming, right? So variables are like containers. They're like buckets where we can store values, where we can store the entities that we are using. And then we can always use them. We can always call them to use them. We can always change them throughout our code, depending on what we are trying to do. So imagine that you're asking computer to add up two numbers for you. When it's done adding those two numbers for you, for you to see the answer to that question, the computer has to store that answers in a kind of a memory, right? So in a kind of a memory space. So a variable represents that kind of thing. So you do an operation, you store your values in the variable,
Oh, so what?
for every entity that you're trying to work on, you have to like put it in a variable, put it in a container where you can always access it and you can always work with it. So variables are a very beautiful concept when it comes to programming, and is the basics of all. So, but we are going to do practical, so I don't speak a lot of English on that. So, but what you see under there is what we call structure of a variable. A variable is basically made up of two parts. We have the keyword, like I have here. We have the keyword, like I have here. Then we have the variable name, like you are seeing here. So this is a basic structure of what a variable looks like, and we are going to be defining a lot of variables when coding. I mean, all your days of writing code, you will be declaring variables. All of your days of software development, software engineering, front end, back end, whatever, you'll be declaring variables all the days of your life. So it's important that you know variables very well. So this is the basic structure of a variable. And so in this variable now, we have two sides to it. We have the keyword, and then we have the variable name. So I'm just going to attempt to give us perspective to what these two are. Then we'll do some practical side, see how we define variable. So yeah. So the first thing is, what is a keyword? A keyword in declaring a variable, keywords could be let, const, and var. I think someone was asking, please mute your mic. I don't know why I'm hearing some noise, but please mute your mic. Jonathan, please mute your mic. Good. So I said yesterday I wrote some things about with let. I think I also wrote const. So these are keywords that we use in defining variables in JavaScript. In some other, because let me just put it out now. Maybe in case you are writing or you're trying to store it somewhere. JavaScript is a dynamically typed um, programming language. We have two kinds of programming languages. We have the statically typed. We have the dynamically typed programming languages. A programming language like C, for those of you that have written C or ever seen it around C, it's a statically typed programming language. It will mean that if I want to declare a variable that is a number, I will probably start with int, then put the name of the variable, then store the number in it. But when it comes to JavaScript does not care whether you know the type of thing that you want to store in a variable or not. It does not care whether you know whether what you want to store is a number or whether it's a string or whether it's a boolean, whatever. JavaScript does not care about all of that. So long as you're able to pick these three keywords, let, const, and val, you can always declare a variable. So there's difference between let and val. I don't know, maybe I should leave this for later, but is the availability within the scope that they are declared. So let was introduced in, I told us about that JavaScript has different JavaScript evolved, right? ESCs, yes, 2020. So in ESCs, that's when they added this let keyword. But when you define a variable with let, is only available inside the block where it is defined, right? So, but if you define a variable with val, they are available throughout the function where they are declared. So let allows you to put some restrictions to the availability and the access to a certain variable that you have defined. And then but var is a wider scope, right? So it's just scope. That's the difference between the two of them. So one has less range and the other one has a wider one. So but it's always advisable to use the recent stuff, which is the let keyword when you are trying to define your variables, you are trying to declare your variables. So then the second part of what we talked about is we talked about keyword, then variable name. So the second part is variable name. So variable name, this is what you choose to call your variable, right? So this one is you that is to choose it by yourself. So you can decide to call your variable James, John, Peter. So, but just a disclaimer, you cannot just call your variable anything. For the sake of the fact that your code has to be readable, you have to declare your variables with names that are descriptive of what they are supposed to do. So you don't just want to declare a variable and call it Peter or whatever. You don't want to do that. You want to declare it with names that actually carry what that variable is supposed to do. For instance, I want to add two numbers together. We're going to see all of that. So for instance, I want to add two numbers together. So after adding the two numbers, I want to store the sum of those two numbers in a particular variable. I can name it total. So I can say let total, right? So it tells you that this is a total of the two numbers that I'm trying to add. So your variables has to be descriptive. 1, 2, JavaScript uses camel casing standard, right? So camel casing standard. So where the first word of your variable has to start with a small letter, then every other word from there, the first word we have to start with a capital letter, right? So it makes your work neat. It makes your work follow proper JavaScript programming standard. I think Python uses what they call Pascal standard and stuff like that, but Python's own is different. Across sorry, across different programming languages, there are different standards. But for JavaScript that we are focusing on, we use camel casing. I think you should do a little research on camel casing just to know what it is, right? So that you will understand that. So let's quickly move to our VS Code. Let me show us one or two things. Right. Okay. I think let me just tend to share that screen. All right. I think it worked. So please type in the comment section if you can see my screen. Please can you signify in the comment section that you can see my screen? All right. Good. So let me take us to VS Code. Okay, so this was our yesterday's soaking Gary competition stuff, right? So let me increase this stuff so that you guys. All right. Okay, good, everybody. Nice. So, let me clear this. Let me start with Okay, so before I continue, there's another. I showed us how to write JavaScript inside of our HTML, right? I showed us how to write JavaScript. So showed us how to link it. Today we are going to be using something else. Let me just show us. I don't really think it's fun using it though, but yeah, let me just show us. So yeah, if you go to your browser, whatever browser you're using, Please mute your mic. Whatever browser you're using, I want you to right click and click on inspect. So when you click on inspect, this is a Firefox. So I don't think it's so different from others. I don't think it's far different from Chrome. But what I want you to locate, whatever browser you are using, is this console here. If somebody is following what I'm doing, you can just notify me in the comment box that you are seeing what I'm doing. I think you should be able to see my screen now. Refresh, you can log out and log in again. You should be able to see my. Someone that is following me should, sort of comment in the comment section that you're following me. All right, good. One person. All right. Okay. Okay, so yeah. So in this console here, we can easily write our JavaScript. Uh, uh, so I just want to show us this, right? Okay, let me show us what I did now. So I declared a variable. So we'll go through all of declaring variables, but I just want to show us that there's a console here that we can use to write our JavaScript on our browser directly without using VS Code or anything stuff like that. So when I write code on my VS Code, this is where it will be displayed. So I don't want it to be strange to you guys, and I'll be showing it up here. So when I write code on my VS Code, we'll be getting the answers here, right? So, but you can always write directly here though if you want. Good. So while that is done, let's go to our work. So we want to start by declaring variable. Good. So we said from our teaching that variables come in two forms, right? We said variables are defined in two forms. We said number one is the keyword, and we said number two is the variable name. Beautiful. So don't mind the errors, really, because these things are yeah. So when we want to define a variable now, so let's use var, for instance, to define a variable, and we want to call that variable. So var is the keyword. So we want to call that variable. I don't even know what to call it. Okay. Let's call the variable. Somebody should suggest what we should call this variable, please. I don't have ideas in my head. I don't want to use my name. Somebody can suggest that. Just type on the comment section. Just type on the comment section. Somebody should. Mute your mic, please. Okay. Upskill. Okay, let's use upskill now. So let's say a certain variable is upskill, right? So yeah. So I thought of camel casing. So the up will be in small letter, then the skill we start with a capital letter, right? So let's declare. So this is exactly how to declare a variable. So you put your keyword then you put your variable name. Okay. But let me show something from this slide I was doing here. Let me show something. So this is what we want to do now. We want to declare a variable, then we want to assign a value to the variable, and then we want to change the value on the variable, right? So let's go to our VS Code now. To be good if you are following on your laptop is on. So what we did here now is, let's say number one, declare a variable. Declare a variable. So this is what we have done now. We have declared a variable. So, but this variable is empty as it is, right? The variable is empty as it is right now. So the next thing we have to do is to assign a value to a variable. So we want to store something inside this container that we just opened now, because I said the variable is a container. So I just open a container now, and I want to store something, right? So let me just change this to let, because basically we'll be working with let more than file, right? Except we want to do old school coding, right? So yeah, let is the new standard. Yes, it's way of code. So let's say I've opened the container now, but it's empty. There's nothing inside of it. So what I want to do is to add something into this container. So that's what we call, that's when we say assign a value to this variable. Okay, so what we want to do is to assign a value to this variable. So we want to add something inside the container. So how we do that is to use the equals to, everybody know what equals to is, right? So we use the equals sign to assign a value to a variable. So if we want to assign a value to this variable now, we can just say, we can call the variable, that's the variable name that we have given this variable now, and then we write equal to. So we want to store how many people are in this class now? 63. We want to store the number of people that are in this class inside of this container to type 63. So take note of this semicolon at the end of it. This is what we call syntax in JavaScript. So you have to, you have to always. So this is the beautiful part about JavaScript. I was telling you guys that it was simple. You guys now believe. You see this this is semicolon now. Yeah, semicolon. See this semicolon that I put at the end. If I remove it, my code will still work. But it's conventional that you always remember to put it. But I'll show us that my code will still work whether I have that semicolon or not. So that's the first thing. So what we can do when we have declared a variable, we can assign a value to the variable. Let's attempt to like refactor this thing. Let's sort of rewrite this variable. Okay, let's not rewrite it first. So I can declare a variable. When I've declared a variable, I can assign a value to the variable. Then another beautiful thing that you can do with the let and val keyword is the fact that if you're using let and val, you can easily change the content of the variable. So although I have said that what is inside of this container is 63, so along the line in my code, I can decide to say, okay, I don't want to use upskill as 63 again, but I don't want to declare a new variable, right? To store that. Maybe what I'm working on requires me to work on upskill as a variable now. So I can change the content of that variable, and I can write like this now. Number 3, change the content of the variable. So what I can do now is to sort of reassign a new value to this stuff that I've written before now. So I can assign it a new value. So instead of the value that was there before, I can just call the variable again and say upskill is equals to how many point in the class now? How many point in the class? 54. So we are now 64 in the class. So I don't want, so what happened now is that by the time we started from here, we were 63 in the class. So later on, we became 64, but it's the same upskill class. Do you see how it is now? So when you're using the let keyword and the val keyword, you can always change the content of your variable. So let's see how this thing works. So there's a function we call console.log. We use console.log to show the result of our work on our console, which is this stuff I told you guys to open. So this is the console. So I can log things to this console to see the results of my calculations, right? So let me show us something now. So I want to just know it as console log for now, right? So it's a way we use to print whatever we are doing on our console, instead of when we wrote JavaScript yesterday, we wrote it on the page, right? We wrote it on the page, but today now I want to show us that we can use console to test our code before pushing it out on our page or before doing any other thing, right? So let's go now. So I want to show you something that's upskill. So I want to show the contents of this upskill, right? So in my teaching now, I'll be showing us one or two things that we do in JavaScript. So if I want to show the content of this upskill, I want to also show the content of this upskill after I have changed the value. So console.log upskill. So if I attempt to go to my console now, I don't know if you can see it. You will see 63. Then you will see 64. Are you seeing it now? Confirm that you can see it on the chat box. You see 63. If you are following me, you'd have already worked on your own end. Then you will see 64. Let me sort of make it a little bit more expressive, right? Good. Let me make it a little bit more expressive so that you understand what I'm saying. So I want to show us a way of writing JavaScript now. I want to show us a way of writing JavaScript now. There's what we call backtick. Backtick, I think it's on your system. I don't know how to explain it. I think that's that key that's close to your 1 on your system keyboard. If you have a very good keyboard, right? So I want to sort of write something. I want to say this is our first value, and I want to put this upskill value here. So to do that, since I want to put this value here, if I just write upskill, it will not work. Let me show us. If I just write what is this? If I just write upskill, it will not work. It will just show console.log. This is our first. It will just show it exactly as it is here. Let me show us now. It will just show exactly as it is there. So you are seeing it here now. This is our first value. So it did not show 63 again. Meanwhile, I wrote upskill there. But for this upskill to show, I would want to put it into this, what do they call this thing? So for this upskill to show, I want to put it inside of this place like this. Let's spell it correctly. It's upskill. I spell it. Okay. So for this upskill to show, I want to use this stuff now. Then I want to also do that for this second one. I want to also do that for this second one, and I want to say this is our second value, just to give it some, to make it expressive a little. So now when I get to our console, here's our console again. When I get to our console, you see that this is our first value, which is 63. Then this is our second value, which is 64. So, but you see that we declared one variable and we assigned the first value to it, and later we had to update it, and later we had to update it to 64, but one single container with two different values. So yeah, so this is the basic skill that you need for declaring a variable. Meanwhile, we just talked about one side of it. Let me attempt to just finish what is here. So now we have learned how to declare variables using the let keyword, and then the val keyword. So I want to show us another one that I used yesterday too, which is the const keyword. Which is a const keyword. Okay, so okay, this is supposed to be this one. This is declared like var. I think I just wrote rubbish here. Okay, so we declare the const keyword. This is the const keyword, right? CONST, which stands for constant. We declare it also like the way we declare our our let and val keyword, only that it has some exceptions, right? Only that it has some exceptions. So the number one thing is that when you are declaring a constant, it must have a value. Let me show us. When you're declaring a constant, it must have a value. So let's say declaring const. Declaring constant. So when we want to declare a constant, you see that when we attempted to declare that our first variable, we did not initially put a value to it at the beginning part. We did not initially put a value to it at the beginning part, but you can't try that with const. But meanwhile, let me show us something. Let me add up something to this first one that we did, number 4. So I want to let me just call it refactor. Refactor the variable. The variable. So I want to refactor this variable now. So instead of first declaring it, later assigning the value, we can do something like let upscale, let upscale. You see, you cannot declare a variable with the same name in one script. So now, as you can see that the compiler is already giving me an error that cannot redeclare blocks scoped variable upscale. So I told us that when it comes to let keeps the scope of a variable within a block, within the block that it is being used. But the val keywords, the scope is wider, so you can use it from anywhere within your code. So you cannot declare a variable with with the same name twice. So let me just sort of change this and say up Genesis, right? For instance. And so instead of declaring it first like this and later coming to add this stuff, it's not like this is wrong, but in different cases you may want to interchange them, depending on the peculiarity of what you are trying to do at that point in time. So you see that you have to now declare. You can easily just declare it once and say let Genesis be equals to, how many are we in the class now? 71. Let Genesis be equals to 71. So this is also this is also this is also correct. This is also very correct. So if we try to use our console, log to log this to our console, we have Genesis. So we'll see that in our console, so in our console, it will show 71. Beautiful. Good. So that's that for that. So let's get back to our const. I just did that so that I don't forget. Let me just delete this stuff here so that you can see. Okay. So you can see all of it at the same time. So yeah, so declaring a const, number one thing is that a const must have a value. So we declare const like constant. So where you majorly use const is if the value of is a particular entity will not change throughout your code. You are sort of certain about what that value will be, and it's not going to be changing within your code. You can just use a constant. Are you getting it now? So you don't want to be using things that you don't want to be. Did you get me? I didn't really hear you.
Please come again. Sorry, your last statement.
Okay, I said when you are building your stuff and you know that you will not need to sort of change the value on a certain entity, so you just want to store it into a const variable. You want to use a const keyword on it. So you don't want to, like this, stuff that we are trying to redeclare the value in this let keyword. If you'll be doing anything that would require the values of your variable to be changing like this, you don't want to use a const. So const means constant. Something that remains really constant is what you want to use your const keyword to store, right? So let me show us an example. So number one thing is that your const must have a variable. Sorry, must have a value, right? Your const must have a value. And there's a way they write const conventionally, but I don't want to go there because a lot of people don't use it, right? So, but let me just say my my const, for instance. So you see, immediately I wrote my const. Let me try and put the semicolon at the front. You see that it spanned an error. Watch what he said. He said const declaration must be initialized. Initialized means that it must carry a value on declaration. So you cannot declare an empty variable with const, right? So it must carry an initial value. So unlike our let or even val that we don't know what the value of this thing will be yet, but we can just declare it first and later add the value. But you can't try that with const. So when you are declaring const, you now say my const, you have to immediately add a value to it. So let's say what's the number of people in the class now? So let's say 66, for instance. So you see that the error is gone. So you for any time you are using your const, there must be a value assigned to it. So yeah, so that's the first thing you have to know about the const. So the second thing, like I said, is that the second thing, like I said, is that you cannot reassign the value. That's what I was trying to tell you. You cannot reassign the value. For instance, when we finish declaring this let, we assigned the value to 63 and later assigned it to 64. Let me now show you. Let's say now my const, for instance, I cannot, you see it's already showing error there. You see it's already showing an error there, but I cannot change it to what's the current number of class. I cannot change it to 67. This is not allowed in your this is not allowed in JavaScript, so you cannot reassign it. So let me show us now. Console dot my const. Okay. So if you look at our console very well, I don't know if you can see my screen. If you look at our console very well, just confirm that you can see my screen. Just type in the chat box. Please don't mute your mic. Just type in the chat box. I want to show us the error now. Can you see it? Good. So if you after that 66, you will see an error message there. So as you keep learning JavaScript, you learn about error messages. So you see what they wrote there. They said on cut type error, invalid assignment to const, my const. And this is the JavaScript line. Let me show us. So this is our JavaScript code. This is in our debugger now. I don't know if I'm using this thing to debug your CSS and the rest. So, but you see that it highlighted this place here. And it told us that invalid assignments to a cost. So this is not allowed when you are using a constant. So it will span an error like this. So it will span an error like this. So in your programming, there are rules. So, but watch now, let me remove this. Let me sort of comment this line out. If I comment this line out now, and then I go back to that place, you see that that error is gone. I don't know if you can see that the error is gone. It just disappeared on its own, right? Confirm that you saw that the error is gone. Good. So yeah, you see that that particular thing is not allowed in JavaScript when you are using your when you are using your code. So there's another one I would have showed us about const, and that's one of the beautiful things about const is that it can protect. It can protect. I think I'll show us that when we have started using. We have talked about data types and the rest of them. So yeah, so this is basically all you need to know for now about declaring variables. And yeah, I said we'll move to the next one now. The next one is data. The next phase is data types. So yeah, there are different data types in JavaScript. Can you still see my screen? Okay, yeah. So there are different data types in JavaScript. Let me go back to JavaScript. And JavaScript, like every other programming language, has data types. And somebody will be asking what are data types. So when we are working with when we are coding and we are working with programming language, like when we are declaring these variables here now, I think we used only numbers. Okay. So we are declaring all these variables here now. The variable we said is a container, and what we put into our variables that are containers are known as data, right? They are known as data. So you receive data, you process data, you send out your data as a web developer, software developer, right? So everything that goes into our variable is described as data. So the kind of data that you store in a variable is now what we describe as data types. So they are now what we describe as data types. So different variables are stored with different types, like numbers, like text, and the rest of them. So when we are storing data in a variable, we store it with different types. Good. So data types are very important when it comes to software development because it will help you as a developer, it will help you as an engineer to make decisions on how the code should be written and how the software should run. So for instance, if you have a form, that you're trying to log in into a page, if the form requires a number and you type in a text, it will span an error for you, right? So that's what it will help you to determine what data types goes in, what data type goes out, what data type to use at some different points. So imagine that we want to add two numbers together. And if we want to add two numbers together, I cannot be using a string, right? I cannot be using letters. I cannot say A plus A. That does not make any sense. Or I cannot say ONE plus TWO. That does not make any sense, right? So when you understand data types, it will help you to It will help you to make better decision as a software developer. Software development. Like I said, this is not just about JavaScript. It's in all programming languages. So basically, um, JavaScript has 7 data types. Basically, JavaScript has 7 data types. You know, and then JavaScript has 7 data types. Let me just quickly just show us some of them before we continue. Yeah, one or two that we can talk about JavaScript data types. So number one is we have string, right? Uh, String is a reserved word, so it's funny. So okay, we have string. Number two, we have we have number. We have number. Number three, we have big. We have big int. Number four, we have boolean. We have boolean, which is okay. We'll go through that. Number five, we have undefined. What they're asking how is undefined data type. Find out. JavaScript will shock you. We have no. Don't know how long this is a data type, but yeah. Then we have symbol. I've never used this one before, Sha. Okay, so we have these 7 basic data types. So now, some people argue that JavaScript has more than some people tell you that JavaScript has 8 data types. They are not lying, but JavaScript data types are divided into 2. We have the primitive data types, which are these ones that I've shown you now. Then we have the non-primitive data types. And then under the non-primitive data types, that's where if you want to write the data types as 8, we'll just say objects. But objects is divided into 3. So we leave this as, so what we do is that we say primitive data types, and then we come down here and we say non-primitive data type. So we have objects, but object data type contains object data type contains one is object, right? There's a data type in JavaScript called object. 2 is called what's happening? 2 is called, I'm just listing all this down. It's called array. Then 3 is called date. 3 is called date. So yeah, so we have string, we have numbers, we have boolean, we have big int, we have undefined, and so on and so forth. So yeah, So a string data type is the data type that can store alphanumeric values. So the number one data type here, string, are, are variables. They are variables that can hold alphanumeric data. So there are just only but a few that are frequently used, and I think I will just, for the sake of time, focus more on that ones, and then the ones that are not most frequently used, we're gonna find out and learn those ones by yourself, right? So, but the truth is, as you keep progressing, you'll be interacting with most and some of them. So let's now declare a certain variable, and let's call it const my string. So we said a string is an can contain alpha numeric numbers. Yeah, big int was added of recent. So I think yes, 2020, that's when they added big int to yeah to JavaScript. So const my string, I said string can contain alphanumeric. So every string variable must be in between quotes. So it's either single quote or double quote. So, but you can't be mixing the two, especially if you have a large code base. Let me see which one I'm already using. You're using backtick. So you can't be mixing the two, especially if you're using large code base, so that you don't confuse yourself. So you want to stick to either using double quote or single quote, right? I think in Python, double quote and single quote mean different things, but I'm not sure about JavaScript. I'm not sure. So you can use, so let's use let's do a string now. So I said a string is an alphanumeric, can hold alphanumeric data. So let's say this Java, this JavaScript, this JavaScript thing is getting hard. Hey, it's getting hard. I wish I did have this emoji. It's getting hard. Then you now say almost times 1,000. All right, so good. So this is our first string. So this is actually what string looks like. So a string can hold alphanumeric values in them. So like yesterday, we wrote a string and then we pushed it to um, our we showed it on our page like we did that yesterday. So yeah, so this is basically how a string looks like, and you'll be using it frequently to store variables, to store data, depending on on how depending on how you want it to be, depending on what you're trying to achieve. For instance, let's sort of play around with this string. Let's display this string on our let's display this string on our page. So let's say how did we do that yesterday again? Let's say document. So you already understand that when we are using documents, we are saying document dot get element by ID. I think the ID of that stuff is document dot get element by ID text. dot inner HTML, and we want to pass in my string. I want to pass in my string. So yeah, so this is already a string value that we discussed, and so we want to sort of write this string value to our HTML page. So let's see if that may not work. Okay, to work, should work. Okay, we have a lot of errors in our code. We have a lot of errors in our code. Let's sort of comment now. Let's go to this. Yeah, so we have succeeded to write that string on our page. So you see that now. So you see that now. So this string the string has displayed on our page. This JavaScript thing is getting out of more. Right, good. So we are done with strings right now. So we already know now that string data type. So anytime we are trying to store some word in a variable, the string data type. But JavaScript is crazy in such a way that when you're trying to declare a variable, it does not need you to know the data type, right? JavaScript does not need you to know the data type. So sometimes you may even write code and you don't know what the data type is. So there's this say a function, I'll call it now. There's this function, let me show us. There's this function called type of. There's this function called type of, right? So if you want to know the data type that is on a particular variable, you can use this type of to know sort of like that type of. So you need to use type of to find out. Let's console log it. By now you should get used to console log already. Let's console log it. So let's find out what type my string is. I say type of is not defined. If it has go, if it has. I'm sorry about that. Type the type of is not defined. Okay, sorry. So if I take type of now, and then I put in okay, type of type of. So I want to find out what is the type of this word. What am I writing? Obi is a boy. Obi is a boy. Obi o Obi a Obi is a boy. So yeah, if you want to find out what the type of this thing is, I can just quickly write Obi is a boy. So when I typed Obi is a boy into that stuff, it showed me that the data type that is attached to it is a string. Are you seeing it now? So if I change what is inside of that type of, so with type of, you can find out what type the particular data is. So if I say 3.4, for instance, now, so let me find out the type. Okay, sorry. So if a number if a number is in between this quotation mark, it is considered as a string. So, but if I remove it from the quotation mark now, I can now begin to look at it as a number, right? So if I go back here now to show you that the type of the data that I put there is a number. Beautiful. So yeah, so but JavaScript, sorry, does not really require you to know the data type you are working with from start, right? So you have that flexibility to define your variables without actually knowing the data type. But it's important that you know the data type that you are expecting and the data type that you are expecting. So that's why I said from the start that JavaScript is dynamically typed. It's dynamically typed. So if you are writing Java, for instance, now, those of us that have written Java, if you're writing Java, for instance, now if you want to define a number, you have to say int num. You now write the number 4 and stuff like that. But JavaScript does not require you to. It's not their business. So that's why I say JavaScript is interesting and flexible. Yeah, because of our time, let's just move. Number. So to define your number is the same thing with declaring variables. So let num be num as a number be let num1 be equals to 30. I see it now. So this is a number variable. Even if it's a float number like let num2 be equals to 70.8. So all of these are still numbers, right? So let's say we want to sort of console log the we want to sort of console log the addition of these two numbers. So normal addition now, something plus something. Yeah. So we can see the answer here, 100.7. Yeah, that's that for that. So we have done with numbers. We have done with string. Big int is a new data type that's added to what do they call it? JavaScript of recent, right? And so I'll just show you how to write it. Never used it before, but when you jam it, you use it. Let me just show you Boolean. Let me show you Boolean. When you meet big int and you have a need to write big, you would meet it and use it. So please type in the comment section if you are still following me. Don't worry, I know this is the boring part, but you just have to know all of this together. So Boolean is either true or false. So the Boolean could either be true or false. So let's say let my true bool be true. So yeah, you may be wondering what is true, what is false. So you may be writing a code, right, and you want to make something false, and you want to make something true for it to fulfill a certain condition, for it to meet a certain condition somewhere along the line, right? So it's always important for you to understand how Boolean work. And one of the things that you must know is that a variable is considered truthy if it equates to a Boolean true. So the interesting thing is that every value in JavaScript is considered to be truthy, truthy, right? Truthy is considered truthy, is considered true, except it is defined as false, right? Except it is defined as false. So there's this big thing around truthy and falsy when it comes to JavaScript. So a variable is considered to be true, except that you have defined it to be false, right? So when you're working with variables, you can decide to make something true, and at some point you can decide to also make something my first book. My first book is supposed to first. So that's this basically what you want to use the booleans for. So they can only be two variable values when it comes to boolean, and they can help you make decisions which certain lines of code should run if the conditions are met. So in several cases we want to use operators, greater than, less than, of which just you learn that in your upper classes, coming classes. So you want to do something if the condition that you set is true. You do another thing if the condition is false. So depending on how you are coding and how you are coding your yeah. So that's that for that. Basically that's that for that. So let's go to the next data types. The next data type, undefined. I'll leave that for now. Let me just go to the ones that are important that you'll be using more often, right? Which is so basically this is the only value for undefined. So when you're just trying to set something to undefined for whatever reason in your code that you need to set something to undefined, you can just easily put it to undefined. Maybe you're trying to hide something, you're trying to ensure that someone does not get access to certain variable or certain data, you can block them by putting undefined. No, if it's empty, yeah, if it's empty, you can just if it's empty, it means it's null. I would have shown us something now, but our time, I need to leave here by 10. So but maybe in subsequent classes. But let me just focus on the ones that you use more often so that you get used to the syntax. So now, object is the next data type that is very important for you to know. So it's a non-primitive data type, and this is how the syntax is. This is how the syntax is. So let's see, you define it like you define every other variable. My object is equals to, this is how the syntax is. An object has one unique thing. It comes in key value pairs. Let me show you now. Key value pair. That's how objects are stored. So there's a key and then there's a value. So for instance, I want to store an object of, let me say biodata is the name of my object so that it will be more relatable. Biodata is the name of my object. And I want to store your name. So name is the key. Then the value should be your name, which would be a string, right? So your name could be Idon boss, whatever. So let's assume that this is your name. Then we have your age. have your age. So age is a number data type, like we talked about. Let's say Don is 56 years old, right? And then we have key value pairs. Then we have what else? Maybe your state, the state you are from. State you are from. Let's say you are from. That's a string. You are from Enugu. You are from Enugu. Then let's say is let's say is short. Let's say is short. So we want to say we're asking a question: is this short? Want to say true. That's a Boolean data type. Okay, so this is what an object looks like. So an object stores data in key value pairs, right? So stores data in key value pairs. So let me try and console log this. That is what I'm saying. Console.log console.log bio it's bio data. I wrote this with bio data. Bio data. So yeah. Good. So when we go to our console now, you can see object here. You can see object here. So it shows us. So it shows us this our object that we wrote here. So we have our name. We have is short. So is this guy short? True. He's short. What is his name? What state is he from? Enugu, whatever. So yeah, we get the object that is here. So there are a lot of things that you can do around your object, right? So there are a lot of stuff that you can do around your object. You can access the values in that object differently. You can access them differently. You can access them from you can access different part of it. So let me just show some. Say dot let me say I just want to access the age from here. So I can just click biodata.age. If I go to my console now, it will just show me the figure of the guy's age, right? Say for instance, you collected a biodata of a group of someone, and then someone just asks you what is the age of the person. Instead of console logging or trying to show all of the data, you can just say dot, using object methods dot age, or is the guy short? You just dot is short, and then you find out if the guy is short or not. So you can just easily go there and you see that, oh, that young man is short, very short. So true, he's short. So yeah, there's some of the things that you can do around your object. And so you're seeing all of these things now. You would surely be using it all through your life, right? Surely be using it all through your life. So it may not make a lot of sense now, but trust me, it makes sense when you start to place demand on them. So the next one is arrays. So an array is a data. An array is a data type that stores data, but this time around it's not like a variable that stores just one data per time or one unit of data per time. What an array does is that it stores a lot of data together in one. So a collection of data is stored together in one. So it's not like objects that stores data in key value pairs. This one, it just goes straight to store data as it were. So it stores this data, and what it does is that it separates the data that are stored in it by a comma. So let's create an array. So let my array be equals to. So this is how an array is created. So once you put in, what do they call it now? Square brackets. Once you put in your square bracket, open and close, the compiler will immediately know that, oh, this guy is trying to set up an array. So you want to store stuff in an array, you can store all manner of things in an array. So let's start with storing a string. Next, right? And then let's store a number, 76. And then let's store, I don't know why we'll be storing true, but let's store true. Put the number, let's, as a Boolean. So you see, it's a collection of all manner of data stored together, right? Sometimes you don't really need to be, sometimes it just needs to be a collection of data that you're trying to store together in one place. So an array is a bigger container more than just a variable now. A variable can store one at a time, but an array is a large container that can store all manner of things, a collection of data together, and it separates it with a comma. Arrays are very interesting to work with, right? So arrays are very, very interesting to work with. So let me try and console log this. Let me try and console log this array now. For instance, my array. Let me show us my console. Please type in the comment section if you are following me. I know that this has been dragging. Just type in the comment section if you have followed. Yeah, so type in the comment section. So yeah, I wanted to show us that array. So this is an array now. You can see it. You can see the array now. So you can see the array now. So this is the array. So there are a lot of methods that are attached to our array. So yeah, see all of the types. The methods that can be used in an array. For instance, there's this pop, takes out the first element, pops out the first element. There's this push, it adds, so there are a lot of methods that can help us perform a lot of operations with our arrays. Arrays are very important and a very wide topic. I mean, we can spend the entire day talking about arrays because they are very important and they are very wide. But let me just show us something. If I needed to add something up to this array, I can say my array dot push, right? So I want to push in a new item called done tire. Okay, so I want to push in this particular string into this array, and I don't need to do this. I don't need to write it. So X, let me just put it here like this, and then let me console log the array again. So if I attempt to console log the array again, you will now see, if you look very well now, as you are seeing here now, in the array, you now see that this our done the tire has joined the array. Can you just confirm that you can see that the chat box? So you can see that that's added, that's joined the array. So we can decide to add another one. We can decide to push in another value. So we can decide to push in another value. Let's say my array dot dot push sleep time. So if we go back to our console now, we'll see that sleep time have added to our array. We have Genesis 21 through that time added to our array. Good. So, but there's one thing about array that I want you to notice from this our console log now. So when we are arranging things in array, are arranging elements in an array, they don't start, they are numbered 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it starts with 0, it does not start with 1. So in your array, your elements does not start counting 1, 2, 3. No, it starts from 0. So we call it index. For instance, let me show you something now. If I want to check the first element that's inside this array, I'll just put this what do you call it, a square bracket at the front, and I'll put 0. So by the time I'll go back to my console now, you will see that only the first element will show, which is Genesis. Are you seeing it now? If I decide to change that value, to 2, for instance, you see that the value here changed to true. So because arrays are arranged 1, 2, no, 0, 1, 2, 3, like that. So the final data type, which is date. So your date data type just simply picks date object, simply pick the date on your system. So if you want to write that, you just want to write const date. If I use const date and I say new date, so I just call the function of date to just quickly pick the date on my machine. Pick the date on my machine and then display it. Let me console and display it for us on the console. Console dot log date. So yeah, so it picks the date on my system. So it picks today's date on my system. It picks today's date on my system, Saturday, May 20th, the time, whatever. So there are a lot of things we can do around. Please, can you mute the mic? There are a lot of things that we can do around our date manipulation, but that's depending on how you are using it, depending on what you want to use in your code. Right? Yeah, I'll just leave it for that. So yeah, we have been able to run through the basic data types that you need. I've been able to run through the basic data types that you need, from declaring variables to different data types and the rest of them. So I'll just introduce this last one. I'll just introduce this last part of it, which are functions. And We're not get into so much details about that right now, but just for us to pick one, two. So yeah, functions, functions. They like to also say functions are data types too in JavaScript, but I don't know why those guys are like this. Functions in JS. So, so we want to write block codes. We want to do. We want to write something that performs a specific task in our code. We want to use what is known as function. So function is a block of code that can be executed on demand. So function is a block of code that can be executed on demand. So if I'm trying to write my code and I just want to, keep a specific code somewhere, and every time I need it, I will just call on the code to run. So
Don't close anything though.
it's a
Just
block of code.
minimize
Please, can you mute your
the
mic? It's a block of code that is written and that you can call on demand. So for example, we are trying. For example, now let me write a code. Um, let me write. Let me say I'm trying to add two numbers. Let let num let num1 be equals to 55, and let num2 be equals to 77, and I say let add be equals to, does not make any sense, 1 plus num2, right? And I want to say console.log add. So yeah, let's say I want to do this. I want to do this. I want
no,
to
no,
do
be
this part.
capitalist. No capitalist. I hope my text
Please,
one one.
can you mute your mic? Could you please mute your mic? So let's say you want to. This is a block of code that you want to be reusing every time. You want to be reusing this code every time, so you can just lock it into a function. So it's a module of code that you can write and you can call it at different times to write. So yeah, this is what the syntax of a function looks like. Let me control. Stop. So the syntax of a function looks like this. So we have function, then you write the name, the name of the fun, sorry, the name of the function, write the name of the function, then you put what do you call this stuff? Parentheses, right? The bracket, yeah, bracket. Put your bracket and then you open this. So this is what your function basically looks like. And then inside of this place is what we call your function body. So this is where you write whatever code that you want to write. For instance, if we want to create a code that will just tell us hello world in our console. So we just write console.log hello, the string actually, hello world, right? So when we write this code like this, so this here you see here is what we call a function. So it's a block of code that we can use at will. So it's a block of code that we can use at will. So what happens is that when we want to use this block of code, as this thing is now, if we check our console, we will not see this hello world because it cannot do anything. You can't see the hello world there. But if we want to use the content of this function, like we said, you have to use it at will. So if we want to use the content of this function, what we will now do is that we now go down here and call the function. Or some people will say invoke. So call the function, we do abracadabra to call the function. And so you write the name of the function and then you put this bracket at the front of it. So this way, whatever is inside of this function block will now be executed, right? So if we go to our listener, you can now see this hello word because we have now invoked that function. So this function will not run except you call it, except you invoke it. And you cannot invoke this function. Please mute your mic. You cannot invoke this function at the top of the function. You cannot invoke it at the top like this. It will span an error. Why didn't the error show? I don't know. So, but you want to take note that you have to invoke your function immediately after the. You have to invoke it under the function that you have written. Right. So, what are the things that you must know about functions? The number one thing you have to know is that you always have to use a very descriptive name for your functions. So whatever the function wants to do, I don't know who wants this mic. All right. I don't know.
Sir, please tell these people to omit their mic.
He's the host mic,
right.
sir.
Miss enough you inside class, they play music.
He's Prosper's mic, Prosper.
All right. So let's find a way to end the class here. It's already after 10. So we'll continue from this place next class. I don't know if anybody has a question that can just be like 5 minutes question, Mr. Dozie. Can you hear me? Okay, somebody has a question. Consent. So I think I will just take only these two so that we can go.
Good evening, boss.
Yes, good evening.
Okay, boss, more. Your class is interesting though. Sure. We keep doing it regardless. Okay, boss. Thank you very much for the class. Okay. Like the question I just have is in the aspect of this function, like can you just give me just a brief detailed aspect of that function and how I can input it in function in my code, sorry.
Maybe in our next class, I don't know when that next class will be, but in the next class, we'll probably do a task together that will implement the functions together.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, sir, please. Okay, sir, please. One more thing. Like this JavaScript file that's open in this your VS Code, like can you go live with it? That's why the fact that you also have an index.html file.
Can I go live with it?
Yes.
Are you talking of live server?
Yes.
The only way I can access this JavaScript is because I have an index.html here. So
Okay.
I sort of used my live server, and since there's an index.html and the script.js is connected
Attached.
to this index.html like we did yesterday. So that way
Okay.
I can get the, if that script is not connected to this index.html, all of this cannot show you, right?
Okay. Okay. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
that's why
Thank you very much.
you like. So, who is next? Mr. Victor. Mr. Victor. Yes, Victor.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's this thing you said yesterday about how you arrange your I don't know if I can use the word T or like the data, like okay, this one now you used this name of function per se, the
Yes.
name as a word, then on getting to of function, the
Uh,
beginning of the of, like the word of, you started with
yes.
a capital letter, but there are
Yes.
some that there are some that like the first word comes with a small letter, then the like there's this particular example you did, instead of from the sequence you've been going is like the first,
Yeah.
then the next one goes with a capital letter, but this there's this one you did, it was like counting, after counting three you now used the big letter or caps. I don't know if there's a particular rule to this thing.
Uh, let me. The rule is, let me just show us. It's called camel case. You can browse it. It's called camel case. Is JavaScript standard form. I think there are two of them. There's camel and then there is snake. It's JavaScript coding convention, right? I don't even know which of these ones to you guys. Uh, it's JavaScript coding convention. So the first word of your variable the first word is written in the first word is written in small letter, then like this now. First word is written in small letter, then the other word is written, then the beginning of the next one is written with capital letter, and so forth and so on and so forth like that. So yeah. So the rule is that the first word should be written in small letters. Then the word after it, any other word after it, the first letter of that word should be capital, like that. So yeah.
Okay,
So I don't
okay,
know if
sorry.
I've been able to help you. Sorry,
Yeah,
if I've
it's
been able to
clear.
help you.
It's very clear.
Eh?
How about it's clear? I understand this part. How about those words that if you are to spell them, it comes with an
Yeah,
hyphen, like you want to write a particular word that's
yeah.
spelling it in the English dictionary or whatsoever. It comes with an hyphen with another word that you just spell plainly like that. I don't know if you get. How do you arrange that?
Okay, a word that comes with hyphen,
Exactly.
say for instance, back, how did they do it again? Uh, let let back end backend developer. Is this what you're trying to say? Is this what you're trying to say? Equals to
Yeah, something
equals
like this. Something like this.
good. So as you can already even see, is already spanning an error. It's already spanning an error for us. The reason is because JavaScript and the convention of writing JavaScript does not require us to use that kind of hyphen. But in this kind of case, instead of using hyphen, you can then use back end developer like this. Are you seeing it?
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah. So that was just how it is. I think in other programming languages, some other conventions, There are different ways of going around that, but that these are JavaScript. All right, that's over. Thank you very much. Mike, I think that's the last question, so I can go. Mike,
Good evening.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Yes, evening. Thank you so much for the class today. It's very impactful. So I want you, I don't know if it can be done in this class. I don't know if you can treat, if you can scroll up one of the data types, big int.
Yes.
I was doing a little research about most of these data types. So I want to know, like, when is a better use case? Because I know most of these data types, they have an amount of storage value, if I may put it that way. I want to know when is a better use case to use the big int data type.
Okay. I think the big int data type, how many letters, how many numbers are that now? The big int data type can take in as large integers as let me show you. This is the length. I can, let's say let big whatever be equals to big, this is how it's written. And the value is as large as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 0, 8. So this is the length of your big int. So if you need to store an integer that has this kind of length, I think it's even more than this. I think it's even more. Right? So if you're trying to, but I don't know why you'll be storing a data like this, but if it happens that you have to store a data this large, I think the big int can cover it up for you. But one beautiful thing about JavaScript is that it picks whatever data types that you are using, right? Regardless of whether you put the data type or not, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, so JavaScript picks your data type.
Thank you.
Are you satisfied?
Yes, I am. Yes, thank you.
That's all now. So thank you very much for, I don't know when the next class will be, but hopefully we'll see. I think I've answered Victor now. Mr. Edozie. All right, now see you.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, because I've been asking for a long time and nobody seems to be responding. So it's fine. Thank you so much, Mr. Prey. Thank you a lot for handling this class in short notice. And to everyone that attended it, thank you so much. So as normal, our classes will be recorded session of our classes will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and you can go back to watch them and learn from them. So by next week, it's expected that you'll be getting your mentors. This is for those that filled their names on that list. So remember how it works now. Keep on practicing, keep on putting in effort. Don't just work with what you have listened in this particular class. Keep on putting effort throughout the week, because programming and development does not just require learning and packing it in your mind. It requires that you learn and you practice. So goodbye to everybody. See you next time on this same channel. Bye. Enjoy your weekend. Can I off this thing?